Hi everyone, and welcome to the Shout Out Loud Careers series. My name is Leonie Price and I'm a young producer with English Heritage. Today I'll be talking with Lauren O'Kill, who is a volunteering and participation assistant with English Heritage. We'll be talking about Lauren's role, so what it is that she does day to day, and we'll be talking about her career path and how she got to where she is. So hopefully this will be helpful for anyone thinking about a career in the heritage sector. Okay, so Lauren, let's start with that big old question. What does a volunteering participation assistant actually do?
Yeah, so I mean, most basic terms, I assist the volunteering participation team. And our kind of role is to help support all the volunteers that English Heritage has, whether that's expenses, kind of developing volunteering programs, doing surveys to see how volunteers are feeling. My specific role is kind of getting involved at a sort of more admin level, the projects that are going on, and then a lot of database work. So we've got about 4,000 volunteers. So it's making sure that all the data is correct. Everyone's, getting every email they should get, things like that.
So volunteers are clearly a massive part of what it is that English Heritage do. So it's really important that your role exists to kind of facilitate all of that. What does an average day look like for you then?
Yeah, well, I'm based at home. This is my bedroom. And yes, I'm based in Kent. Technically, I can work out of the London office, but usually it's home based. I do get to do site visits, which is really great. Usually kind of once every 2 months, we'll have a team meeting, go kind of up north to Hadrian's Wall. That's where we're going in September, meet volunteers, which is great because being home based, the day to day is mostly not one-on-one contact with volunteers. So it's nice to have that opportunity to. And then I sit in on meetings, project boards that are happening, usually taking notes. But what I really like is that I'm given the opportunity to say what I think as well, which is really good. We're quite a small team, the volunteering participation team. There's 5 of us. So it's easy to kind of, say what you think and everyone values it. So that's really nice.
Yeah, really interesting as well that there's 5 of you managing this like 4,000 strong team of volunteers. There's so much problem solving, I'm sure, that kind of comes into play there for you. What kind of skills do you find that you are using most on this day-to-day basis?
So problem solving is definitely one. A lot of the job is kind of reactive. So those inboxes and my inbox are sometimes kind of full with questions from volunteer managers and then volunteers themselves. I know everyone will probably say time management for their job, but you've got to sort of prioritize all these problems that are coming in, understand when to sort them out. That's something that I kind of had to kind of learn. It was a bit of a learning journey for me, knowing that you can't sort every problem at once. So time management and prioritization, definitely skills. And then kind of personability, I don't know if that's a skill or even a word, but sort of face-to-face skills. I kind of help manage relationships with some kind of stakeholders within English Heritage, like our customer service team who handle volunteer inquiries, talking with them, explaining through problems and issues. And then kind of more technical skills, Excel is a huge part of my job and something I've definitely had to learn. So Excel, kind of database management skills, for sure, something I use every day.
Oh, that's really, really interesting. So many different like fires that you've got to keep burning. Have you ever involved in volunteering before you got into the role that you do now?
Yeah, so it's something I feel quite strongly about, how big a part volunteering is in helping keeping heritage going, and then as a way to get into it as a career. I quite like part of this job is I can be focused on access and bringing volunteering to people that you wouldn't usually expect. So most of our volunteers are of a sort of a certain age, certain maybe class, and it's just bringing it to people that you wouldn't usually think. So yeah, I volunteered when I was at uni, and then I had a kind of year out between 2 uni degrees and then this job. So I volunteered in some archives, doing some kind of digitalization work. And I've also done some kind of more ecological volunteering, writing ecology reports for this heritage site down in Cornwall that's kind of privately owned. Yeah, so volunteering definitely is a huge part of keeping any heritage organization running.
Volunteers are the backbone really of English Heritage.
Absolutely.
What kind of path did you take to get into the role that you're in now?
Yeah, so I did a master's in heritage management, but I don't think that's at all necessary to get involved with heritage. And again, something I feel quite strongly about, to do with access and opportunities. And like I was lucky to be able to do the master's, and you don't need to to get into heritage. So that combined with the volunteering I did was quite essential, I think, but more in terms of personal growth rather than actual job skills. The volunteering I did at that ecological heritage organisation, I also kind of helped to come up with some ideas for potential volunteering programs, which I think might have helped me get this job a tiny bit.
What are the main kind of challenges that you face?
Yeah, so challenges I face in the role. I think one of the main ones has been not necessarily role specific, but just it's remote working, it's home working. And my team's small, but we don't all work in the same region. So my boss, for example, lives in Ireland. We've got people in York, in Bristol, Bath, and then I'm in Kent. So I have struggled a little bit with the sort of remoteness of it. I kind of wish there was a little bit more opportunity to get together as a team and work things out. But at the same time, it's meant that we can be really flexible. We don't need to kind of be together to sort things out, and we've gotten really good at that. I think other challenges has been the job is very reactive, and it's kind of you got your hand in a lot of pies, and you're putting out quite a lot of fires sometimes. So that's a challenge, kind of understanding what's a priority for someone else and what's a priority for me and what feasibly I can sort. My boss told me kind of in like my third week, she was like, no one's going to die on this job. Like, it's fine. I've learned to sort of take a breath, take a step back and know that it's important and these things matter. And it's easy to be like, oh, we've got 4,000 volunteers, but every single one of those volunteers is the person and needs help. But it won't be the end of the world if it takes me an extra like 24 hours to respond to something.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Yeah. And in the face of all of those kind of challenges that are a really important part of the job, what do you think are like your favorite parts of the job as well?
It's a cliche, but like every day is different, which I really enjoy. I also really enjoy all the opportunities I've had to, like you said, I have kind of the knowledge of the heritage industry, but this is my first sort of paid heritage role. And just seeing how everything works, being part of this volunteering team, you oversee and can watch so many amazing heritage things happen, talking to kind of curatorial and interpretation teams, but then also development teams, business teams, finances, and just understanding that heritage is obviously English Heritage is a charity, but it's kind of a big organization as well. And it kind of runs kind of on a business model, understanding all those different things that make the organization work and keep heritage going. So I've really enjoyed that. It's a good sort of breadth and depth job, some brilliant experience gained. I've also really enjoyed just the personal development of the role, which is something I absolutely did not expect. The team and the organization is just really willing to help me develop as a person, and seeing that this is kind of an entry-level job. Where do I want to go? I talk about this with the team and my boss, my line manager, which has been brilliant. So I've done a couple of personal development courses, one about kind of leadership in the social charity sector, which is external, and then an internal one, which is about like personal growth and understanding. It helped me a lot with those time management issues I was having. And I've really appreciated that.
Oh, that's really, really cool. And really feels like such a massive takeaway from that is that you don't have to be this like polished career person immediately when you walk into a job, right? That the organizations that you're working for are going to be prepared to nurture those skills and to give you additional skills. That's really, really fantastic to hear. Awesome. It feels like a really key moment in lots of ways for different kinds of people coming into heritage. People are really starting to challenge this kind of idea that, oh, you need a master's or a PhD or whatever to go into the heritage sector. It really feels like that's less the case nowadays. Do you see that reflected in the kinds of people doing jobs around you as well?
I think so, yeah. It's one of the projects that someone in my team is working on is working with young people. So that's kind of going to schools and doing kind of work experience, because that's a kind of volunteering, improving what we offer for our volunteers that are in that sort of like 16 to 25-year-old bracket. And that's been really great seeing that being done. As part of that, I was sort of part of a little focus group for people within that younger age bracket that work for English Heritage and volunteer for English Heritage, and seeing what we're thinking in terms of how it is being a younger person working in heritage. In terms of volunteers, I know something we've spoken about multiple times is when we're kind of advertising a volunteering role, putting out our we have a digital magazine and physical magazine we send out to volunteers a few times a year, and it's kind of who's on the front cover. And yeah, it definitely feels like you say, kind of a key moment, people are thinking about, well, whose heritage is this? Who controls it? Whose story is it? And it's meant to be everyone's story. And yeah, it does feel like people are really getting into that, which is good.
That's fantastic. Yeah, because it really feels like that being part of Shout Out Loud. So to see that reflected in lots of different parts of English heritage and people's experiences of the job is really, really cool. And yeah, to see that kind of heritage landscape changing is really, really, really just fab. So if you did have one piece of advice for someone who wants to get into this kind of work, what would that be?
Yeah, I think it would be something that I definitely thought was, I want to work in heritage, and that was it. And I didn't quite realize how big that was, because I mean, I work in the HR department and human resources, and volunteering kind of falls under that, which is something I didn't think I would be doing and be enjoying so much when I was kind of on my master's volunteering. But it's a big part of heritage and it feels very meaningful. And so I think it's understanding that the perception of working in heritage isn't always, you know, curating an exhibition, writing interpretation boards. There's a lot that goes into it. It's a lot of moving parts. And it's a lot of people facing as well, because you're telling stories and someone's got to listen and someone's got to be interested. So that's something that I definitely would maybe tell either my younger self or someone that's looking to get into heritage. It's kind of look at the different roles and the different ways into it. And just because maybe you're not working in that kind of curatorial, if that's your dream role in the end, doesn't mean that you're kind of not on the way and not getting valuable experience while you're going there.
Absolutely, yeah. And I feel like that really comes back to our kind of earlier point about volunteering, that volunteering can be a really great way of figuring out what kind of area it might be that you would want to go into afterwards and trying out all of these different roles. Yeah, fantastic. Cool. So what's your kind of one favourite thing, I suppose, that you've done in the job so far?
I stewarded the solstice event at Stonehenge in June, which was just amazing. It was such a cool thing to be part of. So yeah, I kind of volunteered. I did the sort of morning shift, I called it, which was like, I think it was 11 until 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. And it was just sort of kind of getting people onto buses and getting them up to the stones. But it was brilliant being able to travel somewhere and see this amazing big event and going up to Stonehenge and watching the sunrise. That was really special and a part of the job that I definitely don't take for granted. It's that actually being able to go to a heritage site and experience it. Just absolutely fantastic, and talk to the volunteers that were there. It wasn't just people like me that had kind of traveled from other parts of the organization. There were some like the Neolithic huts at Stonehenge, some volunteers who kind of give their time for those huts were there as well, and it was brilliant talking to them. There was this one little boy it was his birthday on the solstice, and his parents had brought him there, and he's probably about 8 years old, and just watching this volunteer like tell this little boy how important his birthday was just incredible. I really enjoyed that moment.
That's amazing. So it feels like in English Heritage, you could be taken from one role that's your kind of like day-to-day role, and then you kind of have to go to these more one-off events as well. Is that's your experience of it?
Yeah, so it's kind of less being sent off somewhere, and it was the chance to volunteer and the chance to be able to do that. I know I didn't get to do it, but in Whitby, they had a big sort of gathering of like largest collection of vampires in the world. It was a Guinness World Record attempt. And someone in my team who lives up north, she went and stewarded that event as well. So yeah, it's like I say, all the site visits we get to do are just great and a really nice break. Because yeah, in September we're going up to Hadrian's Wall. We're going to do some of the art installations up there, Hadrian's 1900. And yeah, it's a nice change rather than just being you work at home, you work in the office. It's kind of you get to go out and your office is Hadrian's Wall for a day, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, and that's really interesting as well that you move between this kind of slightly more abstracted, like dealing with the 4,000 volunteers, and then another day you can essentially be one of them. That's really cool. You still get to keep that volunteering interest that was key to your passion for the role in the first place, I suppose. So that might be a good place to kind of draw things to a close. For everyone watching, this video is part of a wider series where we've been in conversation with people in a wide range of roles at English Heritage. So if you have enjoyed this video and it was useful for you, do go ahead and have a look for the other interviews through the Shout Out Loud channel. Thank you so much, Lauren. And I'm Leonie Price. Thank you for joining us today.